This Sunday, more than 60 million Turks will cast their ballot to decide the country's next president. Turkey is a NATO member, part of the G20, and for 2 decades has been led by Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The opposition calls him authoritarian. He calls them terrorists. And as Nick Schifrin reports, Erdogan faces his toughest battle yet in an election that could have major implications for Turkey and its allies.
In the city that propelled him to power 3 decades ago, the man dubbed Turkey's new sultan unleashed new insults.
CHP, LGBT'ci mi?
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan last weekend branded his opponent pro-LGBT, a supporter of terrorism, and a drunkard.
Mr. Kemal, drink as much as you want. You can drink a full keg, but even that will not make you better. My nation will not give the floor to an alcoholic.
Mr. Kemal is opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who focuses on kitchen table issues from his kitchen table.
This is the real agenda of the people, as they all know that when I come to power, there will be democracy, and your purchasing power will increase.
Kılıçdaroğlu has pressed that message at his own massive rallies, and a united opposition of a half a dozen parties poses the greatest electoral threat that Erdogan has ever faced.
I know it's a cliche for the politicians to say that the upcoming elections are existential, but in Turkey's case, it's actually true.
Gönül Tuğ is the founding director of the Middle East Institute's Turkey program and the author of Erdogan's War.
If he wins another term, I think Turkey will degenerate further into an authoritarian regime. If the opposition wins, however, I think Turkish democracy will have a shot.
Voters' number one issue has been sticker shock. Today, inflation is more than 40%, down from 85% last November.
They've said inflation is 85%, but I don't think it's 85%. It feels around 250% to 300%.
31-year-old Melika Saka feels the cost of living crisis as consumer and seller. She works at a deli that's a family affair. That's her father. They've never witnessed consumers buying less or profits dropping faster.
The quantities that we sold have decreased. I can say our sales have decreased by half.
Turkey's economic pain runs deep, but analysts say Erdogan's unorthodox prescription of slashing interest rates made the country sicker.
The country's faltering economy and the cost of living crisis has been high on the voters' agenda. And these economic troubles are largely of President Erdogan's own making. And the second problem for voters is this growing repression.
In 2013, police and the government cracked down on critics after massive anti-government protests. In 2016, the government accused the military of a failed coup. And Erdogan launched a society-wide purge. 50,000 arrested. 150,000 lost their jobs or were suspended, including teachers branded terrorists who clashed with police. And critical journalists like Cumhuriyet Books magazine editor Turhan Güney were detained, as he told me back in 2017.
What happens to people in Turkey right now if they oppose the government?
I can only answer this question through my own experience, and that is, you are thrown into jail. The government has no tolerance for the slightest criticism.
And the 2018 election created a new presidential system that increased Erdogan's powers.
From now on, it's time for the president and the parliament to do more work.
But that portrayal of himself crumbled in February's earthquake. Countless buildings collapsed. At least 50,000 people died. Survivors criticized the government for a slow response and for favoring builders who cut corners.
He promised that if the country switched to a presidential system that would grant him unprecedented powers, that he would be able to solve the country's pressing problems in a more efficient way. And on the day of the earthquake, we saw that that was not the case.
It was another mega quake in 1999 that helped propel him to power. He became prime minister in 2003 thanks to anger against the secular political elite. He was the alternative, a religious, working-class outsider who presented himself a progressive ally to the West and helped lead the country to economic growth. But today, Erdogan's charisma and populism has divided society.
he has become a very polarizing figure, and that's why I think he's facing such a huge challenge in the upcoming vote, because he always relied on others, relied on alliances to secure a majority, and for the first time in 2 decades, he's struggling to find new allies.
He's leaned on strongmen, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, for economic, political, and military support. An Erdogan loss could weaken that partnership. And the opposition fears an Erdogan loss could also lead to violence. On Sunday, a leading opposition figure's bus was pelted with stones, and Erdogan has threatened to take to the streets. Today, Kılıçdaroğlu's aide said he campaigned with a bulletproof vest and armed guards. He and his wife have made a heart their symbol, and he hopes to put an end to what he calls 20 years of one-man rule. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.